Business Adventures, the business program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphs and successes of business owners across the land. Downloadable audio episodes can be found in the podcast link found at drawincustomers.com. We are locally underwritten by the Bank of Sun Prairie. If you're listening to this on the web, you can do us a huge favor as you listen. Comment below and let us know what kind of problems or challenges you've had with money and debt and all that jazz, because that is what we're talking about today. Today we have Marcus Garrett of the Marcus Garrett, also the best-selling author of Debt Free or Die Trying. So we prefer the earlier one, not the later one, I guess. So Marcus, how's it going today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for being here. So tell me, let's just start with the book, because Debt Free or Die Trying seems pretty, I guess, kind of a big deal. Nobody wants to die, but nobody wants to be in debt. So just tell us just broadly what that's all about.
Yeah, it's actually a much lighter story than the title would suggest, but it's the story of me getting out of debt from age 22, or actually getting into debt at age 22, getting out of debt by age 30. I paid off $30,000 in debt, and I started living that journey around age 27 when I finally got serious about getting out of debt. And it tells that moved to Denver, Colorado, which is a great city and state. So plug to anyone from Denver, Colorado that's listening.
Nice.
And it shares that story and gives my 4-step plan for getting out of debt.
All right. And what was, let's just talk about the debt initially, right? You're 22 years old. I imagine you get credit cards and think, hey, man, everything is free. All I have to do is swipe.
It's pretty much exactly like that. So I feel like every elder millennial like myself anyway has the same story. You land on a college campus, you're 18 years old, everything's going good. You walk through the main hall and all of a sudden there's a bunch of tables with swag and you end up signing for this little piece of plastic that ended up costing you for the next 10 years of your life. So that was my story. I got a yo-yo for my particular swag. Did okay. I got about $9,000 in debt in school, which, you know, the average college student's coming out with about, $30,000 in student loans and some level of credit card debt. And what happened that led to the book is I graduated, $9,000 in debt, got my first job, and then I got a consolidation loan offer. Didn't know anything about it. Didn't even really know what consolidation loans were. They cut me a check for $10,000 to pay off those $9,000 in credit card. Instead, I spent the $10,000, bought a car with rims. Basically lived the life of a 22-year-old, at least, or 22-year-old rapper, maybe more accurately, right. Ja Morant life, I guess.
Oh, that's funny. So what was the trigger when you said, wait a second, what do I got to fix this? Or like, was it just the endless letters in the mail or phone calls saying, hey buddy, you gotta pay us back kind of thing? What was the real trigger?
It actually 7 years later. I call it rock bottom in the book. And so, flash forward. So when I graduated college, I don't know how college students think now, but back then in the early stages of social media, I was like, I'm going to graduate college and get rich. Obviously, that's why I went to college. So I'm going to be rich as soon as I graduate. Didn't quite work out that way.
They give you a diploma and a yacht.
Exactly. That was the school to riches pipeline that I thought I was going to jump on. It didn't quite work out that way. So 5 years later, I'm kind of coming to that realization. I'm now closer to $30,000 in debt, and rock bottom actually came. I missed one of those card payments from school 7 years earlier. Now, for those I actually don't know what it started at, but I know it ended at 29%. So overnight, I wasn't going to be able to afford the debt that I had because the interest rate jumped so much.
Wow.
And I remember calling them. Yeah. Got upset and ended up doing a bunch of other dumb things. I was like, I closed the credit card because they wouldn't lower the interest rate. And so I messed up my utilization rate. Like all these things that I know now, had no idea about at age 27. And I remember rock bottom was several months later. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to pay for all this debt now. And I ended up having to beg a call center worker for a different consolidation loan. And I was like, I'll never put myself in this position again. So that was my wake up call, but I really didn't know what to do. That started the journey to debt freedom.
Gotcha. All right. And you said it took you a few years to get out of it. Once you decide, deciding is step one, but then you have to actually take action. How did you figure out what you were going to do to get out of debt?
I actually did not Google it because I'm an elder millennial. I went to yahoo.com and I was like, how do you get out of debt? I'm at rock bottom begging people for consolidation loans. What do I do? And the website's actually still around. They're in the top 5. I'm not sure they're the largest anymore, but they were one of the largest then. So it took me to bankrate.com. So if you go to bankrate.com, / calculators. They have a bunch of calculators that you can use to calculate all your debt freedom plans, your mortgage plan, basically any debt that you can get yourself into. Bankrate has a plan for you to get out of. I chose the credit card debt option, and it literally, I printed out a PDF. It told me this is how much you're going to have to pay every month to be out of debt. I told myself I wanted to be out of debt by age 30 because I thought that was very old and elder at the time. And so I was
Ancient.
It's the end of the line. It's the end of the road. So I got to be out of debt by age 30. And so I had 36 months to put my plan into place.
All right. And you made it happen.
Yeah. Mission accomplished. First step, I realized, at least in my case, I needed more money. At the time, I was already working 3 jobs and I was still struggling to pay minimum payment. So I wasn't against work, but at that time, I only knew how to trade time for money. So there's only so many hours in a day, only so many hours in a week. I had a full-time job. I was selling phones for AT&T. Fortunately, because iPhone came out that year, so I made like a bunch of money in commission checks. And then I was also putting computers together at a warehouse. So I wasn't shy about work, but I knew that it was unsustainable for me to keep working like that. And so my first task was to find a higher paying job.
Nice. And you did that, sounds like.
I did. And that's what took me to Denver, Colorado. So for those of those, again, doing math at home, this is 2008. So this was the start of the Great Recession. I'm out here looking for work. And I just applied all over the country because I just knew I needed more money. And I just kind of did a shotgun approach. And I got a call from Denver, Colorado, and they actually hired me from a phone interview. Mind you, all the risk was on my side because it was a 6-month probationary job. So I could have been laid off after 6 months, but I was like, I had put myself in a position where I needed more money. And so I got the call, did the interview, and I had never negotiated salary in my life. And they were like, what are your salary expectations? But I had watched this movie once, and this guy was like, he asked for 70,000, and once again, I thought 30 was old. I thought 70,000 was a lot of money because of this movie I watched. I was like, 70,000. They're like, yeah, sure, come on up. And so I ended up going to Denver, and I replaced. That was a 40% salary jump for me. So I ended up replacing 3 jobs with 1 job. And that was the start of living the life that would become debt free or die trying.
All right, but you had to move, so that's
I did.
Free.
Yeah, I relocated. I mean, technically, it was because of how I moved.
Okay.
So I sold everything that wasn't locked down and couldn't fit in that car with rims. So and I purposely kept, and I had to accommodate this huge TV I had bought as part of my $30,000 debt journey. I put that in the back seat, and I was like, anything that can't fit around this TV, which is my only prized possession and asset from this $30,000 debt journey, and I drove to Denver, Colorado. So gas and relocation. That was all I really had to pay.
Right. And do you still have that job, or that was forever ago? So
I'm still in that lane. So even before then, I was an auditor. I was an auditor for about 20 years. I've made a couple pivots since that time, and I'm trying to do this business full time. That'd be the ultimate goal, obviously. Side hustle and passive income my way to doing this full time. But I was an auditor for 20 years, and then I went into compliance, and I'm trying to, kind of figure out what's next on this, I guess, the third part of my journey, my career journey, if you will.
Fair. So how do you view debt now?
About the same, but I have a different perspective on the priority it has in my life. So I still try to stay out of credit card debt just because of the high interest and just the burden that it places on individuals. I'm a little more sympathetic about how I coach individuals because, after a pandemic and a few recessions, one thing that I realized when I was getting out of it, I was so singularly focused. I do feel like I missed out on a lot of life. So especially when I'm talking to 20-year-olds and things like that, I was like, yes, I got out of debt, but I missed some events that you can't recreate. And so I left my home state, went to this other state, and I was basically there for 7 years. So I missed out on a lot of events, weddings, families, children's births, like things that cannot be recreated because I was so singularly focused and obsessed with getting out of debt. So I caution a little bit about that, but I think, personal finance, you put the personal finance in your journey, and then you find a plan that works for you. A lot of people ask me, like, what's the best plan? I say the best plan is a plan that works.
All right, fair. It's interesting you say that. You missed out on some stuff because I was just talking with, Jenna, another podcast that I have, about essentially when you say yes to something that you're super focused on, if you are truly super focused, you're going to have to sacrifice saying yes to some other things. If you're trying to do it all, essentially you can't.
Right.
So you accomplished your goal by the time that you said you would, and in exchange, some things had to be sacrificed. That's just the name of the game. We would love to be able to do it all, have it all, but in the end, that would be a very tough, probably boring game to play.
I'm seeing like the little Thanos meme in my head, but I accomplished it, but at what cost?
Right.
So
Yeah, true story.
The goal was achieved, but at what cost?
Yeah, you look at any famous successful person, the Warren Buffett's, Elon Musk, all that kind of stuff. I am certain that they would have situations or things that they missed because they were focusing their eye on whatever prize that they were after.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add for maybe the person who's at that pivot either now or maybe at the later pivot looking back, I can only make that decision in hindsight. I only know that was such a potential sacrifice because I'm looking at it backwards. Yeah, because a lot of people ask me, do you regret the decision? I'm like, well, no, because I did achieve the goal. But looking back at it in retrospect, I'm now going to do things differently going forward, or prospectively, if you will.
Right. Very true. Very true. So tell us about the Marcus Garrett, the business.
So right now, I'm universally branded with the Marcus Garrett. My current brand is I have a podcast called Life After Debt with the Marcus Garrett because, wrote the book Debt Free or Die Trying. Obviously, naturally, is Life After Debt. I kind of curious now about, how to make more money. And so I've been looking at ways to diversify through side hustles and passive income. The tagline is helping working professionals struggling with burnout like myself find easier ways to make or keep more money. So that's kind of like what I do. And then I like my real passion is, finding people who have done it themselves. Influencers and entrepreneurs who have accomplished either life after debt or they found that search that we all have or a lot of people have for that work-life balance.
Right. It's funny you mentioned the work-life balance because that is one phrase that when a potential employee says that to me in an interview, I'm like, you're not a good fit. And I say that you're not a good fit as an employee for the jobs that I have because we have time, scheduled time. It's not like, hey, just do it when you feel like it kind of thing. But like there's scheduled time, and in reality, they are trading time for money. So with this job, with the jobs that I have, with the call answering service, and with, you could argue most jobs, the employee is trading time for money.
Yeah.
So work-life balance, I say you figure that out when you let me know when you want to work and how many hours you want to work. Outside of that, the hours that I'm paying you, you do what we agreed to in the interview. And outside of that, I don't care what you do. There's your balance. So it's
I think it's excuse me.
No, that's essentially the point that I have. So as entrepreneurs, different story, because we punch in once and we don't get to punch out until we close or sell the business. So it is a struggle for us sometimes. I know it's a struggle for me. When like the end of the day, you're like, hey, I got to go make it to my kid's baseball game. So you got to shut the computer down, move on with your life outside of work. It is challenging because you're never done. Where the advantage of the employee is like, it's 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whatever. I punch out, go home. Somebody else's problem now.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have conversations like this with your either current or future employer. And I feel that I didn't. First of all, I think I did a good job of it early on. And that might have just been because similar to what you're saying as an employee at that time, like I didn't care how much I worked. Like, okay, you want me to work 60, 80, 120? Yeah, like if you compensate me accordingly, I don't really care. I was working 3 jobs, like whatever, because I was so singularly focused on that. Now I have a different perspective, although arguably I work about the same amount of hours. But about 20 of those hours, it's the quote from Shark Tank, entrepreneurs only people that will work 80 hours to avoid working 40 hours. So I probably still work 80 hours, but 40 hours is like job. It's probably closer to 60. 40 hours is my 9 to 5. And then 20 hours, I really get a hard focus on, what I want to do to scale the Marcus Garrett. So ideally it becomes either the 40 or 60 or 80 hours job, because when I work in the Marcus Garrett, the LLC, people are like, is he talking in third person? When I work in my own business, it doesn't feel like work, as cliche as that might sound. Like I said, I probably work on paper and maybe by the clock and maybe by my wife's watch, the same exact hours, but it feels like a different level of accomplishment. I feel like I'm walking in what I should be doing, in my
Fair.
purpose. And like, so I can do that. I can do that forever. I could do that for free, but I won't.
Fair. Totally fair. I understand. It's interesting. You remind me of me back in the college days. I was working 3 or 4 jobs, I guess, depending upon exactly when. And I missed out on a lot of the college experience that I had the debt from college when I got out,
Right.
but I didn't have as many drinking stories or just hanging out with your buddies because I was working a lot. And I remember getting a speeding ticket, and I was sitting on the side of the road with the cop behind me, and I'm thinking, I'm on my way to a job that I got pulled over on my way to work. And I was thinking speeding ticket's going to be in the neighborhood $150, something like that. At the time, I'm making $3.85 an hour. So I was working out the numbers in my head after taxes. How many hours do I have to work for the speeding ticket? Like, it would have been cheaper for me to just tell work, I'm not coming in for the next 6 months. Stay home. Don't get the speeding ticket. It was crazy. But in the end, what that led me to was I would just put in more hours so I could pay off that ticket.
Right.
But I never stopped working more hours. It was one of those, like, I'm working hard to pay for the car so I can drive to work.
Yeah.
Endless cycle, it seemed like. So it took me a while to learn to get out of that as well, to stop trading time for money.
Yeah.
Terrible
Definitely.
trade. Terrible trade.
Yeah. But I feel that maybe we're all saying the same thing is, what is the youth is wasted on the young? Like, it took me being young and getting older to realize, I probably should have approached that a little bit differently. Probably the same advice my parents have been trying to drill into my head unsuccessfully for the last 20 years.
Right.
But now it's, starting to sink in a little bit, to hit a little bit differently.
Yeah. Well, you raised a good point, right? I was told by, I don't know if necessarily my parents, but a lot of people that I know that were older than me and said, dude, you got to change what you're doing. And I was like, nah, things like, why don't you invest in your retirement now when you're in your 20s? I'm like, well, because I'm eating generic ramen. That's why. So it's not priority. And you think, well, where would it be now if I would have actually taken their advice? It was great advice. It fell on deaf ears.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's tough. So when you talk to people that are in debt, broadly speaking, what do you see are the mistakes that they made to get them into debt?
Actually, if I was to put it in a broad category, there's no plan. I didn't really have a plan. I wanted something. If I couldn't afford it, I had this, like you said, magic money that I could swipe and get it for free. And so I think a lot of people, school, big categories withstanding, school, home, medical debt. Some of which you can scale. Medical debt you might not be able to prevent. Those 3 categories witstanding, I feel like the rest, consumer debt, there's no plan behind it. It's just like I buy things that I want, and this credit card or line of credit, however you go about access, it allows me to buy that thing that I want.
Mm-hmm.
And in my case, and I feel like in a lot of cases, because you're making that minimum payment, you don't realize the tsunami that's growing behind that debt, the actual debt, the principal debt. You just see the minimum payment line. So let's kind of break those numbers down. So the average American has about $7,000, at least last time I checked, maybe higher now, $7,000 in credit card debt. Average interest rate's about 18% on that credit card debt. I know for a fact that's higher, so I haven't looked in a while. So if you made the minimum payment on that debt, it would take you 30 years to pay off just that original 7,000.
Assuming you didn't add anything more to it.
Right. If you never, exactly. If you never added to the principal, you never, did a lump sum payment. And I think that's what people aren't thinking about. They're like, I want Taco Bell today. I'm not worried about that I'll be paying for this Taco Bell at my children's graduation, and so they're not thinking about it in that way.
And just the math of the Taco Bell, right? Let's just say you spend $10 at Taco Bell at 18% interest or whatever it is for the next 10, 20 years.
Right.
Like, that burrito just cost you $50.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Is that really that good of a burrito?
Right. And just like you're talking about with the speeding ticket, whether it's hourly or salary, they're not, well, how much do I need to work to pay off this now $50 Taco Bell? It's this instant gratification and immediate satisfaction, but then you have to go to your day job. Say you make 10 hours, or $10 an hour. So that's 5 hours of work you have to do that day just to pay off that taco.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just different ways of looking at it.
Tell me, my perspective, I was just sitting around a bonfire the other day with some neighbor friends, and we were talking about cash and how I carry cash, but majority of the people sitting around that fire carry no cash. And we're talking 40-something-year-old people that are kids, that there's going to be a time when people are knocking at their door, asking them to buy popcorn or cookies or whatever it is that little kids are selling, their bake sale or whatever, to raise money for their little league. But these guys are like, no, don't carry cash. All I carry is a card. And from my point of view, I thought, one, there's always a need for cash at some point, and usually when you need cash, you don't have it. So,
Right.
and I find that cash, you can negotiate way better with cash than you can with a credit card. But also, I feel like with plastic, it's so smooth and easy, whether that thing is $5 or $5 million, it's the same action. Where if I got to pay you $5 versus counting out $5 million, in my head, that's going to be a way different process. Like, what am I doing here? So have you, I guess I say all that to ask, have you seen the volume of debt get bigger with some of your clients, or is that more or less maintained since the dawn of time when credit was first introduced?
Number one is a great question. The way I would look at it, I guess the way I would look at it is I haven't looked at it that way. And I think that debt probably hasn't grown, especially by percentage from my clients. But that's more a reflection of the fact that actually barring the pandemic, when we were all locked in, people were living outside their means both before and after. So if the pandemic was the tide or the wave in this place or the division line, we were living outside our means before and after. So the percentages, if anything, returned back to the mean or returned back to the norm.
All right.
But I do think it's maybe something to think about. I do agree with you that, and I think even statistically, people spend slower when they have cash. I personally carry cash around, but I'm more so from the philosophy of, and it's usually a small amount of cash, more from the philosophy of, I'd rather have and not need than need and not have. And I usually carry like $100. I usually, if I don't have 100, I re-up back to the 100. And that's usually just to, I actually didn't have the sophistication behind you said for like negotiation thing. I'm usually thinking like valet because I live in a big city. So,
sure.
but actually, now I think about it, I could probably negotiate some of these valets if I wanted to. So I'm thinking of like the cash exchanges that might come up in my life that would make it more easier just to have that immediate cash transaction. But yeah, I'm pretty much, even in that scenario, I'm 95, maybe even 98%, digital.
All right. Yeah, I mean, it seems to be, I don't want to say universal, but very broad that, I mean, it's the digital world as far as that goes. I was just volunteering at Bratfest locally here. I was in Madison, Wisconsin. Huge bratwurst celebration because in Wisconsin, we like meat, cheese, and beer.
I mean, those
Anyways,
all things, good things to like.
Yeah, they have lines, like dozens of people long, to get in this big celebration that they have over the Memorial Day weekend. Okay. And people had asked me if some people were like, do you take cash? And other people were like, do you take card? Which is interesting because one, I'm thinking about it like, if you don't have $5 to buy a brat, maybe you shouldn't buy the brat. And the other thing was the whole credit card thing, like how many brats are you buying? But in the end, if they don't carry cash, it was just funny that the way that the question came up, the answer was just like, yeah, we take care of both. But it was interesting because this wasn't like, hey, I want to buy this TV, this $5,000 TV, or I don't know if they have TVs that are $5,000 anymore, but let's just say they do, where it's like, I got to plan out this purchase and payments and all that kind of stuff. Like we're talking a brat, a really big hot dog. It's just all that was going on. So it's funny because I was like, man, if I would have gotten that question 10 years ago, my perspective would have been different. Today, it was just like, oh, you probably don't have cash. So no big deal. Yeah, we take credit card.
Well, interesting. Yeah, interesting enough. I mean, I think you're seeing that similar move. At least I am, and I don't know if it's a reflection of. I'm in Houston, Texas, so we just passed Chicago. So I think we're like the second or third largest, definitely in the United States, and I'm sure that puts us in the top 10 in the world.
Wow!
But you'll go to entities, they won't accept cash. I've gone to entities with my cash. Can I give you this American tender? They're like, we haven't accepted that in 5 years. Yeah, exactly. What is that? To your point, I do think the ability to manage however you transact your money is actually grown in importance. I think people think about it less because it's digital, but it's actually probably more important to have that mindset of how you manage and spend your money, because it's so easier to get rid of it these days, and it'll get easier, it'll get faster.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. You raise a good point. I was listening to another podcast. I was talking about the way that essentially we are built, we as a country, society, whatever, we are built and steered towards becoming consumers. Like that's the whole point. A lot of people are just happy. All we want you to do is just buy as
Sure.
much as you possibly can. Worry about it later, pay for it later, kind of thing, whenever later is.
Right.
But it's interesting how this particular society is just based on that. And you almost have to rise above that to see, like, wait a second, do I need this? Do I really want it? Is this necessary? What is this actually costing me? What is the opportunity cost for buying it versus not buying it? All that kind of stuff versus just falling with the flow and just getting the next big thing, whatever that next big thing is in your life.
That's a really great point as well, because if you choose, and it is a choice to take this journey like I did, to get out of debt and whatever that means to you. I have a mortgage now. I have a mortgage and a car, just in full transparency, and both of those at low interest rates. I was like, okay, whatever. But it was a choice that I made. But if you make the choice to get out of debt, you're going to be alone, or you're going to have to find like-minded individuals. Your immediate circle, it's like going on a diet, like, oh, this guy, Mr. Health over here, Mr. Debt Freedom. So it took me a while to find a like-minded support group, and it can at times be a lonely journey. I'll give another example. Actually, I guess I'm still on this for a while there. I was like, oh, I'm going to cut back on drinking. Just for no reason, just for me personally, it's a decision I'm gonna make. But everybody treats it like you're harming their weekend. Like, oh, this guy's not drinking. No, I can't drink. I'm like, you can do whatever you want. So I'm getting out of debt. It has no reflection or impact on your day-to-day life, but your immediate circle may, even though they support you in your growth and journey, but they may have some type of feelings about that. So anyway, it could be a lonely walk as well. So I think that's a good point to share with the audiences.
Absolutely. I mean, you become who you hang out with. So if you say, hey, I'm going to start jogging, you hang out with people like, whoa, what's the rush? Who are you running from?
What's wrong?
You got to have that circle that's either all exercise or jog or whatever it is. The same thing I imagine with money, health, finances.
Yep.
That's the whole game, right? You take a look at all your friends and average them out in whatever position, right? Health, finance, where they live, all that kind of stuff. And you're like, oh, I'm the average of this crew. I got to find a better crew.
I do think, going back to the digital, that is where you can game the system, if you will. So let's say you're an immediate circle, or let's say you're small town, wherever USA. You might not be able to find that in your group, in your niche, and that's fine. Like, let's say you want to become an entrepreneur and launch whatever business, and that business will not be successful in your immediate area. Potentially, your customer demographic or base is not in that area. I do think the internet has broken that a lot, where I found that, like, my customer base, at least at the top of my funnel, is the world. Potentially the world is interested in money conversations. Now, within that, there's going to be people interested in debt. There's going to be people in there like, yes, I'm interested in money, but only if it's about making $1 billion. So like you said earlier, they'll have to talk to Elon or somebody like that. That's a problem I'm trying to solve for myself as well. So if you have that information, please share it with me too.
Yeah, right.
But I do think the internet you can find those like-minded groups, Facebook, TikTok, whatever your social media is, Instagram, and like niche down to like, okay, here are people trying to do this as well. So it's not as lonely as a journey. I feel like that's how you can game the system in your favor.
Fair. Totally fair. It's interesting you mentioned the car thing. It was a few years ago, I sold a business and I bought a new car as kind of a reward to myself for selling the business.
Yep.
And I made a mistake when I sold the business. I took payments instead of just getting the bag of money. And so when I bought the car, I got payments with the car. And every time I walked towards that thing, I thought, I still owe 15 grand, 20 grand, whatever it was, 10 grand. And even as it whittled down, every time I walked towards that car, I knew what the balance was. And I just felt that.
Yeah.
When I finally sold that car, and I bought a different car that was just paid for cash, it was so much easier to walk to that car. It was almost one of those things where I'm like, this is awesome. It's paid for. It's a whole new light. But interesting thing is with the house, like mortgage that we have, The interest rate right now is so low because we refinanced back when the world was falling apart.
Mhm.
Now the world's falling apart in a different way and interest rates are relatively high. So I'm like,
Right.
I don't know if it makes financial sense to pay this thing off.
Right.
So it's interesting. Anyways, let's go down a couple more of these bullet points you talked about.
Sure.
You said something about affiliate sales. This is a digital thing. So one, can you explain what that is? And two, let us know what you accomplished and how you accomplished it.
So I think the simplest way is I'll take Amazon because most people are familiar with it. I'm also an Amazon influencer, so I could do this quite literally. So I have an Amazon storefront. Anyone can set up an Amazon storefront. It's just a different program that I'm in. And if you go to my Amazon storefront, and I have like 20 personal finance books that I've both read and reviewed. It's my favorite, my ranked by my favorite being The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. And you buy a book from me, I'll get a percentage you buy from my page. In fact, if you go on, so now you're already there, and like you said, we're in a consumer society, so you fall into an Amazon spiral and you go and buy a fridge, a fridge, a TV, a car, whatever else you buy while you're there. I'll get a percentage of that because you landed on Amazon through my quote an affiliate link.
Oh, nice.
So an affiliate link is basically, affiliate is basically a contractual agreement between me and a vendor where I get a percentage of their sales. And so that was a example of it. What I talked about is how do you, Amazon's one example, but how do you bring customers, basically your lead acquisition, how do you acquire customers? So in that particular case, I have a newsletter, community newsletter. For example, Father's Day is coming up. I have a list of like 20 gifts that I've gotten over the years. So it's gifts for men that don't suck. And it's like, here's 20 gifts that people have bought me. So if you want to shop for your father, are you shopping on Amazon today? Click this. You're already on my community newsletter. It's an easy way to support the Marcus Garrett LLC, not talking in third person. And so that's like an easy way to get an affiliate. The one where I made $250,000 in gross sales was I had a contractual agreement for a business that was selling investment courses. So anytime someone bought an investment course through them, I got 40% of that sale. And you can work out, you can direct negotiate. A lot of these, if you're like, well, I have a large social media following, I'd like to get into this, you can just Google, does, this shirt that I have on, let's say it's a polo shirt, does Polo have an affiliate program? You'd be surprised how many just have online affiliate programs that people aren't. They're like scholarships. They're like, hey, here's some free money that you can get. Just like billions of dollars in scholarships go unused every year, billions of dollars in unspent affiliate money is out there if you want to go out there and access it.
Nice. So when you started going after the affiliate money, were you at your day job or is this when you started the side hustle?
Taking a couple of steps back and threading together, I actually found this through a community of like-minded individuals. There's a group called FinCon. They meet every year. I've missed the last couple of years between wedding and just life. But they meet every year. It's a tech and media company, and they come together and they talk about ways that people in this personal finance space are making money. And one of them was affiliates. I think somebody had made it. I'm always interested when somebody makes $1 million because that's a goal that I have for myself.
Right.
So I was like, oh, okay, there's a way for me to make money that I can actualize in my business. Sometimes you hear about people make $1 billion. Like let's go back to Elon. I'm not going to build a spaceship that takes us to Mars. So while Elon is a billionaire, I don't know how to make Tesla. So that is not something I can actualize in my day-to-day life. So you find a business that you can make repeatable in your social media or through your business, or you can start from scratch. But it's something that you can actually do based on your skill set. So that's how I stumbled onto affiliate marketing by going to this group and surrounding myself by like-minded entrepreneurs who wanted to find ways to make more money.
All right. And this is an in-person group?
Yeah, it is now. We met virtual for 2 years due to the pandemic, but I went for 7 years, and I think it's been around for 10 to 13 years. But once again, I had a friend, her niche, actually I met her through FinCon. Now I'm talking through this. Her niche is speaking at conferences. And so she said there's like some ridiculous amount of conferences every day. There's like 76 or something. I mean, you think about that, you multiply that across the country at any given time. Let's say there was 100, and I'm pretty sure it was a large number than that. If there was 100 conferences in every state, at any given time across the United States, her niche is speaking at those about personal finance because, you go to these conferences, a lot of people don't know how to manage their money. They don't know how to do whatever business they're doing. The example she gave me, she went to one it was a conference for fast food industry grill cooks. The entire conference were people who wanted to upgrade their grill game. And she said it was one of the more fascinating ones that she's been to. But you think about all the things there could be a conference for. I say that to say, if you're like, whoa, where do I get started? Google something that you're interested in, maybe put conference in quotes and see like what's out there. And there's no harm. A lot of these are, well, FinCon is not cheap, but a lot of these are pretty cheap. I went to one, Denver was really big on conferences too. Another thing is conferences are usually at great cities. So go to these conferences, surround yourself by like-minded individuals and see, hey, is this something I can do or explore? And if nothing else, you'll get, like you said, a great story out of it at the Grill Cook conference.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to be in Denver for a conference in July.
Yeah, Denver, Vegas, Miami, Florida. I've been to a few in Florida. Even my little audit job, we are nerds. We are the one thing where it is true. We are a bunch of nerds, but we have some great conferences. I went to one in Vegas before. And so they still party just like everybody else.
Oh, yeah. I don't. Oh, yeah. You back the Excel spreadsheets away. It's time to have a good time.
Well, I assume like everybody else. Maybe other people have more fun, but for auditors, we have our fun.
Sure, I get it. You have something in here about how you increased your salary by 400%. Let's talk about that.
So part of that was the Denver journey I was talking about, but I'll go back in the beginning. So I graduated at age 22. I was making $9 an hour. I was actually this job it's funny what skills come to help you later on in life. So I was working at a copy center. I probably used more skills from that copy center job, like throughout the course of my life, because I can take a copier apart today. you put a Xerox copier in front of me. I'm like, oh, you obviously got to put up the X slide, Y switch, and then you slide back here. Oh, the paper jam. I can unjam a copier, like nobody's business. That being said, $9 an hour. Got my first job after school. This is post $10,000 loan, and I got a job making $19,600. And I remember that number distinctly because it was so much lower than the $1 million that I thought I was going to make when I got rich out of school. So it is seared into my brain. Now, mind you, like you were talking about earlier, it had health benefits and it came with a pension. I didn't think, all I saw was $19,600. I was like, this is the worst paying job I've ever had in my life on paper. And then from there, I just started, because I was singularly focused on money, I just started chasing after money. It's actually how I ended up in audit. That first job was $19,000 in data entry. I saw a job for audit that was double that, which was rich in my mind. It was $30,000. And I was like, I got to get that job. I got to get that. I applied 3 times for that job. I had the same hiring manager 3 times, and he turned me down 2 of those 3 times.
Wow. All right.
I feel like the third time, I broke his spirit. He was like, you know what, this guy, got to hire him. Ended up becoming my friend and manager. So $30,000. Got my certifications. I'm a certified internal auditor. Collected a few more certifications over the years. I'll pause here for the listening audience benefit. If you are in college or if you're thinking about college, trade schools and certifications are an easy way to, again, game the system to accelerate your income levels in ways. So look for certifications or look for trades or look for certifications that you can elect that won't cost you $30,000 or $50,000 like you and I collected to go to college.
Right.
I did that in tandem with college. Jumped to a $50,000 job in Austin, Texas. That's when I collected the other 2 jobs. And this whole time, I'm never negotiating my salary. I just see a job with higher money, posted and I apply for it. The first time I negotiated my salary was the $70,000 job. And then after I saw the power of that, to this day, I question how much more money I could have got if I had watched a better movie and he'd asked for more money. I'll actually pause again here for the listening audience. I rewatched that movie. I was talking to a woman who also watched that movie during a podcast interview, and she's like, I think he said 80,000. I rewatched that movie like in my 30s, and he did say 80,000. So I oops-graded myself out of $10,000.
Oops.
So I guess pay attention to the details is, the lesson learned takeaway there. And then negotiated my salary again as I moved up from lead to audit supervisor. And that, of course, of that arc, I think that's a little bit under 10 years. That's that $400,000 increase. So I guess the moral of the story would be here, don't let where you land be where you end. I could have been like, damn, 19,600. That's it for me. That's the end of Marcus's story. But I'm like, no, it doesn't end here. At 30, actually, I think before 30, I crossed over 6 figures, and I could have been like, I made it. I finally accomplished 22-year-old Marcus's goal. That it's in for me. And like, no, like I told you, I'm at the pivot now where I'm like, okay, this is nice. I like the life that we live. I like the home that we're in. I like the life. So we just got back from London. I like this life, But I'm the type of person, and it sounds like you are too. Maybe it's the entrepreneur mind. Like, I want more of this life. I want my cup to runneth over, not to be full. So my cup is full. I want it to runneth over.
Grow or die. That's it.
Yep. And yeah, that's the 400% story.
Yeah. Oh, nice. I like it. Yeah. I always treat the ladder like it's never ending. You get to the next rung and there's always another rung. I talked to a lot of people. I was at a, oh my gosh, a high school job fair looking for people. And I swear just about every kid that I talked to was looking for a one rung ladder. And that one rung was at the top.
CEO.
And I'm like, dude, you're 16, 17 years old. Like, you got a lot of rungs before you have anything to contribute even close to the top of the rung. You can't, like, your mom still ties your shoes for you, kind of thing. So, but it was interesting how that mindset was purely like, I don't need the bottom rungs. I just want that top one. Like, you wouldn't know what to do with the top if you got there because you haven't gone through the bottom rungs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, maybe equally like you. I'm very curious. The one thing I share a lot, especially like with clients and, you know, like you said, talking to high school students, which I'm fortunate to actually consider it a privilege to do, is everything has gotten faster except the traditional workforce. Like the career ladder is the same. My father had to climb the same career ladder. He probably said he climbed it faster, but that being said,
back in my day, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it was that ladder was on 2 other ladders up a hill. So that being said,
right, and it was snowing.
I'll be curious how that translates. How the world has gotten faster, but they're at the crash course intersection, if you will, of like the career ladder is roughly still the same.
Yeah, I think I look at these kids and I was like, what are these guys thinking? Right? Because this is going to be their first job.
Right.
But then I think, well, these are kids that were raised on YouTube, right, where they see YouTubers that are making millions of dollars doing essentially nothing.
Right.
Where they can pay for other people to edit and all that kind of stuff. Like, example, my kid was watching a video that had a group of guys going on a road trip, going to every Walmart and buying a Snickers bar at every Walmart. And I come in the living room, my kid's watching this. I'm like, dude, this has got to be the dumbest thing I've ever seen. What are you doing to your brain?
Right.
And then I look and it had, I don't know, it was like 20 million views or something.
Sounds about right.
Oh my gosh. If I was a high school kid and I saw like all you got to do is go buy Snickers bars and record it and you'll be a millionaire. And then you go to some job fair and some clown like me is saying, hey, answer phones and you'll make whatever, $15 an hour.
Right.
They're probably like, yeah, no, I like the Snickers bar idea better.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I
definitely, I see how they have come to that conclusion. The Snickers life does seem better.
Yeah. Seems like, well, I'm having fun with my buddies. I record it. I make some trick shots. This is amazing. Right? I'm like, I don't know if it's quite the light switch that you think it is, but I mean, if it is for you, great. Have at her. I wish I would have had that when I was a kid, but I don't think it exists as easily as it's portrayed to be necessarily now.
I think the merging of the worlds, at least maybe I'm talking to myself. I've been trying to do this with my nephew. He seems to have grown out of this part of it. He wanted to be a rapper. Like, of course, why not? Because again, rapper lifestyle. I think I went through this phase as well. But it's also showing, tying it together. The other, like the producer, probably makes more than the rapper. I know he's going to take more home that day. And, you know, the engineer in the booth is a sound engineer who went to school, and he's probably making more than both of them, at least for the day, to put together. And so like showing them the other behind the scenes, somebody had to hold that camera and do that editing. So they just don't think that the end is the Snickers. A lot of people, it's actually Jay-Z who said this, but a lot of people are vested in the output. So that's what they think the conclusion is. And so they don't know what the work it took. And then he used Kobe, you know, he saw Kobe score 61 in Madison. He's like, Kobe was shooting at 2 p.m. Like I saw him putting up shots in warm up 8 hours before the game. And he probably put up 2,000 before that night. So you got to think about like the work ethic it takes so you can buy that Snickers and get 20.
Totally. Yeah, you got to put in the work. Yeah, think of someone like Jay-Z, where I can be like, I want to be that guy. But there are probably a long list of rappers. I think of like 50 Cent or TLC. I remember them having a video about how they went broke and bankrupt. Right. And they're like, we have songs on the radio and we can't even afford rent. Because they got their millions and then they had to pay their producers and pay their record label and all that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah,
you
I think
don't
she
see
said
that back end. You see the front end with the videos and the glamour and all that kind of stuff. But like, it's not quite that
Yeah, I
easy.
think she said they made $7 each or something ridiculous.
Oh,
from
that's
one album
funny.
after they paid
We
everybody.
can each get a Starbucks coffee.
Hey, they can get a Snickers. Yeah, if only
Right,
they
get a
could have made Snickers. They could have made
Oh,
20
it's
million
funny.
videos. Shine it all.
That is Tell me really quick here. We don't have a ton of time, but you did have another thing on the bullet point list about being debt free in 4 steps.
Yep.
Can you knock that out quick?
So I re-released the book in 2020. It became a bestseller on Amazon Kindle, and I worked with the editor, is what I'm saying. We focused on the system, which now I'm really big on systems to help you reach success. And the debt is actually an acronym, so it's define the problem. A lot of people don't even know how much debt they have, so a lot of people can go to annualcreditreport.com to get their free credit report, not your credit score. You can get that anywhere. We can talk about that offline. E is establish the plan. So now you know how much debt you have. Establish a plan. Bankrate, I've already recommended. Still a great tool. NerdWallet has some great calculators. Reach to me offline at themarcusgarrett.com. I actually give that part away for free. B is build a budget. So you define a problem, you establish a plan, build a budget. A lot of people try to build a budget up front. Then they're basically setting up a system to fail because they don't know what their problem is. And then T is to trust the process. Trust the steps in the process. For me, it was 36 months because I thought 30 was old and I wanted to be out of debt. So whatever your finish line is going to be, you work backwards for them, put the system in place. And I encourage people to automate it. Take yourself out of the system whenever possible.
Oh, so that means automatic payments to the credit card coming out of your account or your payroll or whatever is automatically deposited.
Yep. So like you said, I would be walking to that car in pity, like, oh man, I know exactly how much this car costs. Instead, you can be like, I know exactly when this car is going to be paid off. It's automatic. I just got to trust the process.
Nice. I love it. Marcus, where can people find you?
I'm universally branded at the Marcus Garrett. If you are struggling professional, struggling with burnout, you can find me at themarcusgarrett.com. I'm most active on Instagram, but I'm actually moving over to YouTube, and I've just launched 2 channels. One already has 500 subscribers, and then I've got a how-to channel where I just basically, I'm expanding. Like you said, I always pivot. I want my cup to runneth over. I'm expanding the conversation to how-to videos. Why? Because I looked at the data, and how-to videos is the top search videos on YouTube. So yours truly will be creating how-to videos for any of the questions that you might have beyond personal finance. Find me at themarcusgarrett.com.
That is genius. The how-to videos. I love it. So let's put this one, how to get out of debt or something like that, right? Millions of views. Here we come.
Yeah, exactly. Here we just need a Snickers.
That's all there's to it. All the kids will be watching.
Exactly.
Oh, that's funny. This has been Authentic Business Adventures, a business program that brings you the struggle stories and triumphant successes of business owners across the land. We are locally underwritten by the Bank of Sun Prairie. If you could do us a huge favor, give it the big old thumbs up, subscribe, and of course, share this with all your friends, whether they are in debt or you don't want them to be in debt because you want them to be the cool circle of friends that you hang out with. My name is James Caterman, and Authentic Business Adventures is brought to you by Calls on Call, offering call answering services for service businesses across the country on the web at callsoncall.com, as well as the Bold Business Book, a book for the entrepreneur in all of us, available wherever fine books are sold. We'd like to thank you, our wonderful listeners, as well as our guest, Marcus Garrett of the Marcus Garrett LLC, as well as the best-selling author of Debt Free or Die Trying. Marcus, where can people find that book?
Amazon. You can find that on the website, well, at themarcusgarrett.com.
Got it. Awesome. Past episodes can be found morning, noon, and night. The podcast link found at drawincustomers.com. Thank you for listening. We will see you next week. I want you to stay awesome. And if you do nothing else, enjoy your business.